of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to read a quick announcement, just talking about how we're doing our meetings for right now. It says, until further notice, we will be enforcing the CDC 10-person limit, and we will hold board meetings with no public attendance. Referencing the Attorney General's March 12, 2020 opinion, we are providing an email address for questions or concerns. That email address is boardmeeting@lhusd.org, and the meeting can be viewed live at www.lhusd.org/board-videos.
John, you can turn that mic down if you want to. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to review and accept the agenda for this session?
So moved.
Second. Martina Aliar,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Cecil Roman.
Yes. Okay, our first action item is 3.1, the approval of plan to issue credits and promote students for the 2019-2020 school year, and that's presented by Mrs. Asire.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. It is recommended that the board approve the exceptions to policy and adopt the following plan to issue credits and promote students for the 2019-2020 school year. HB 2910, also SB 1694, providing for procedures regarding public school closures related to the coronavirus disease 2019, was signed by the governor and placed into law. The State Board of Education, subsequent 1920 only. IKA, Grading and Assessment Systems. IKA Regulation, Grading and Assessment Systems. IKAB, Report Cards Progress Reports. IKAB Regulation A, Report Cards Progress Reports. IKE, Promotion and Retention of Students. IKE Regulation A, Promotion and Retention of Students. Promotion Standards, and IKE Regulation B, Promotion and Retention of Students, Competency Requirements for Promotion from 3rd grade. It is recommended that the board adopt the following grading and promotion revisions for 2019-20 only. Elementary schools. All students' grades will be calculated on the work completed during the first 3 quarters of the year. Retentions that were already in process will continue forward based on the data and progress of students. No additional retentions will be considered. Middle school. All students' grades will be calculated on the work completed during the first 3 quarters of the year. All students will be promoted. Students enrolled in Algebra 1 for high school credit will follow the guidelines for high school. High school. Student grades credits will be based on the grade the student was earning prior to spring break. Students may enhance their grades during the remote learning opportunity. No grades will be lowered due to failure to participate in learning opportunities provided after spring break. All students who are failing courses have been contacted by teachers to ensure the opportunity to earn credits. The affected board policies, the legislation signed by the governor, and the administrative code adopted by the State Board of Education were emailed to the board prior to the meeting. I would also like to share a summary of the major areas of policy exceptions included in that list of policies. The first exception is the requirement to issue 4 9-week reports during the year, because we will not be able to issue that 4th report. That is noted in policy IKA, IKAR, and IKAB. The second exception is the mastery of content standards. Teachers were unable to finish the school year, and therefore there are some standards that will not be able to be mastered or documented. That is in IKAR and IKE. The requirement that teachers issue 2 grades per week through the end of the year. That is also in IKAR and IKE. Providing the opportunity to improve grades or attend summer school. which is included in IKAB-RA. That may not apply in every situation because at the elementary level, we are not grading work. Promotion and retention based on mastery of content standards and standardized achievement tests are IKE and IKERA. And then also the third grade's requirement for move on when reading based on the state assessment, IKERB. So those are the exceptions. I do want to share that we still must issue fourth quarter report cards. Actually our annual report cards, our IKAB requires that, and Arizona statute requires that we must distribute an annual report card. And so these are the recommendations that we make exceptions in these areas so that we can issue an annual report card for students, as well as promote our students and graduate our students at the high school.
Do I have a motion on item 3.1?
I move we approve 3.1 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to recommend that you repeat the email address for parents or students who are watching this streaming video right now, or live streaming right now, and give them a chance to compose a question that they might have or clarify something they don't understand. And maybe a couple of times during this part of the agenda would be to pause and let them do that.
Okay, so if you didn't catch the email address, it's boardmeeting@lhusd.org. Board is BOARD. And we would appreciate it if you emailed in any questions that you have. Do we have any questions so far?
Mrs. Daigle is monitoring those, so
Yes.
we do not.
Madam President,
Yes.
we request that Archie mute her end of the phone unless she intends on speaking, so we're not distracted.
Archie, did you hear that? There's been a request that you mute your phone unless you have something to say.
Yes,
Yes, okay, thank you.
my phone is muted unless I have something to say.
Okay, thank you.
So on Algebra 1, you're referring to the first entire year of algebra at the high school, or you're referring to the 1-2 class at the high school that they can take? Because they offer both of those at Thunderbolt.
Yes.
Okay.
It'd be, if
I'm good, thank you.
if the class is for high school credit.
I'm sorry, the 8th grade mathematics class is not offered for high school credit any longer because it's the 8th grade standards. And so it's only the Algebra 1 class.
Okay.
When you were saying the Algebra 1-2 was the first half of algebra that was originally offered before.
Yes, my phone is muted and I will say anything when I can. Thank you. My phone is muted and
That's an echo.
Okay.
And so when we changed after Thunderbolt received their F grade and we revamped the entire 8th grade mathematics program, that change was made.
And then do I have to tell my students about they maybe not having to actually do the work they're being given?
You can tell them whatever you want.
I will tell you that my kids know that that their work is not being collected and that if they don't participate, it won't be counted against them. But we told them that in our home, it is required. It does not matter what their teachers are requiring of them. Okay, any other discussion about this item?
No, but along that line, I just wanted to say I've heard from a few parents with elementary school kids that are a little flustered, especially the parents that contact me that have kids at multiple schools, and they're a bit overwhelmed. So I just wanted to say the advice that I gave a couple of parents was, don't be so concerned with the exact homework. Be concerned with reading with your kids every day, having your kids write a page every day just to keep up the muscle memory, and do the basic math, flashcards, and don't stress yourself out. So I just wanted to say something because I know a lot of parents are a little stressed out about it and feel pressure they have never felt before, and that is not this
That is not the
administration,
intention.
this district's intention whatsoever. So.
part of that, I think, and I noticed it because I have 3 children in school right now, was in the lead up to it, there was a lot of email. And it compounded itself because I'm a board member and I get all the email. And so kind of what we did is we went, you know what, we're gonna breathe, we're gonna let Monday happen. And then we're gonna figure this out for our kids. One of the things in a crisis situation that you should be doing is over communicating. The district, I think, did a good job of over communicating. But in the electronic communication, that can become daunting for a lot of people. It's one of the reasons why I've got 2 of my packets. It's just easier.
Sorry, why you did what?
We've got 2 of our kids on packets.
Oh.
Written material as opposed to electronic. The other thing is that once you get into it, once you see what's actually being put out, first week it was 4 worksheets for one kid, 4 worksheets for another, and the special needs one had a lot of coloring to do. So it's, once you get there, it's not daunting. I can see where the high school might be an issue because some of the things, my brother was down Monday, he teaches 3rd grade up in Clark County. And it was interesting. I was sitting there chatting with him in between my oldest one who's in school here, between his questions, and they were on math and money. And finally he looked at it and he says, I don't know, ask your dad, he does this every day. So there is some of that where some of the terminology may not be familiar to everyone. And even in the math and money, the terminology that I use in my business was much different than the terminology on the worksheet. So it did take a little bit of looking. But all of that said, I haven't seen anything daunting or overwhelming past the communication piece.
And if I could clarify, at the elementary and middle school level, what we've asked is 2 language arts assignments, 2 math assignments per week. And that's it. So they're not getting overlooked by work, but it's keeping them going. And then what we've talked about doing now is moving at the elementary level and middle school level to distribution every 2 weeks instead of every week, so that because of the bringing people out all the time. At the high school level, it's a little bit different because of the fact that the students do need to earn the credits. And so we actually are keeping them at a 1-week schedule because when the work is turned in, if they're choosing to do the paperwork, which many are, we need to let it sit before we can grade it. And so if we did a 2-week, we would never get things graded in time to actually help students. And so that information will go out this afternoon if the board approves these, along with this information to parents. At the beginning, we had a lot of anxiety with staff as well about trying to meet kids' needs and worried about what they weren't going to learn. And I think people have finally relaxed a little bit. And so I believe that it's slowing down a little bit, that over communication. But one of the areas that we've emphasized is every single teacher must be available for their students to contact if they have questions. And they should have provided office hours. And so I appreciate you saying the question about the math and money and the vocabulary, because ideally there should have been a time for the student to call the teacher and ask, or in another way contact that teacher and ask questions.
And this was just a conversation. I'm fortunate in my office space, I have a separate area with a conference table in it. And I actually had an elementary school teacher at the ready. I've had a couple of accommodations, but it was just one of those things where he didn't know and I did, but my vocabulary was worded a little bit differently than what was on the sheet. And could we have called the teacher? Sure, but it was close enough we could work.
And I wasn't suggesting in your case, but just in general, having it out there that the teachers are available to answer questions and to conference with students.
And I have been so far very impressed with the responsiveness of the teachers. I put it somewhat on my kids because they're a little bit older. I have a 6th and 8th grader and a 9th grader. And so I put it on them that it's still their responsibility to communicate with their teachers. And so far, every time that they've needed to reach out with a question, they've received an answer within minutes. So I've been very impressed with that. The other thing that I think this has been, if I'm looking for a silver lining in all of this, one of them has been that it's taught my kids and given them a little bit of practice on how to structure their day. So again, I've let them be responsible for calendaring their Zoom meetings and their deadlines, and then given them some flexibility in how they structure their day to meet those deadlines. And I think that that's really good practice for if they go on to college or, which is what I'm hoping that will happen, or whatever they do in life, that concept of sort of thinking ahead and thinking about what they need to do. I think that this is providing good practice for them.
Not that there's a lot to laugh at in this situation, but there was one request that we received from a special education student to his counselor, requesting that she contact President Trump and ask him to please destroy the coronavirus. It's ruining everything.
I have a question about the policy. Have the high school counselors been given this, and do they feel that they have enough guidance and knowing what to do to decide whether a student should graduate or not?
Each school group, so high school, middle, and elementary principals together, each sat down and starting with the recommendations of the legislature and the regulation, developed the plan of what they're doing. So there's actually a more detailed plan for the high school.
Okay.
This is the summary of the overall effect of it. But yes, they do. So that's a long way of answering the question, but they have been involved. Teachers and counselors have been involved and talking about how they would develop grades, et cetera.
I'm glad to hear that.
Last question for me. I've been getting a couple of people asking me what the graduation ceremony will look like if we have one at all.
And so we have been talking about this at this point in time. It doesn't appear as though we will have a graduation ceremony. And so what we're trying to figure out is how we might do some things that would be different, but honor our students for graduation. I know right now, the other area that we've been talking about is our evenings of excellence and our scholarship presentations, which we won't be able to hold as well. And so the high school is being really creative, as are others. But in particular, the high school are creating I would say, similar to a PowerPoint video, which will show each student's photograph, the scholarships they've won, and have comments about them that will be available. And then they have some ideas about graduation as well, but we haven't quite figured that out yet.
So the seniors are getting input or giving suggestions about what they would like, if possible.
I do not believe that the seniors are giving that input. The seniors pretty much want to have a ceremony.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, if they're told to prepare not to have a ceremony, then they could give some alternate suggestions.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I completely understand the disappointment of students and their families who, you know, they've worked their entire school year or school career for a graduation ceremony, and then it appears that is not going to happen, or if it does happen, it will be very unconventional and not look like the way it's been in years past. And so if you're sad about that, I want you to know that we're sad too, because that is not the send-off that we would have wanted to give you if it were up to us.
There's a question. Okay. It's from Deanna Flecker. And the question is, how is the statutory requirement to pass the civics test for seniors being addressed?
I don't have the legislation in front of me. It is addressed in the legislation.
I read it recently.
I
and
believe
it's-
they have to still pass the
It has to be
civics test, yes.
But this year it's still a D, right?
Yeah, it's the original PET scores.
Right. So next year they have to get a C, but this year a D.
So the high school teachers who give that test are going to have to make arrangements somehow to administer.
Well, they have been taking that test
Okay.
since the 10th grade, I believe. And I believe they're down to very few students who haven't passed the
okay.
test, so they would have those opportunities.
And that's good for for parents to realize that some of their children may have passed the test 2 years ago. Okay.
And it does say in here, not specifically about that, but if there's any reason for a parent or student to believe that they might not have made the requirements, they're receiving communication about those issues on an individual basis. Is that correct?
That is correct, and if there is somebody who has been missed in that process, I would suggest they contact their counselors immediately.
Any other questions from?
That's my only question.
Are we ready to vote on this? Yeah. Okay, did you have anything, Archie? We're ready to vote, Archie. Did you have any further comments?
She needs to unmute in order to vote anyway.
Are you there, Archie?
You need to tell her to unmute, remind her.
I'm not sure if she can hear me. Archie, can you hear us? We cannot hear you if you can hear us. Well, maybe we won't worry about it unless it turns out to be a split vote. Okay. I think we're ready.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Joe Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes,
Archana Aliyar,
not recorded.
and Lisa Roman.
Yes. Oh, and I forgot to say, but again, if you have questions about that item, please feel free to continue to email in questions and they will be answered even if it's not during this meeting.
Oh, I'm good, thank you. We're ready to vote. Do you have any further comments? No, I have no comment, thank you. I am unmuted, I don't. Yes, I'm here. Can you not hear me?
Well, now we can hear you.
Ask her,
Yes, I can hear you.
tell her to cast her
It's
vote.
a replay. Okay. What should I do? Just. Okay.
She's
I hear you. Nicole Cohen,
We're gonna let the replay play out.
Joe Maston, Kathy Cox, yes. Archana Aliyar, yes. And Lisa Roman, yes.
So, and I forgot to say, but again, if you have questions about that item, please feel free to continue to email in questions, so that they will be answered even if it's not during this meeting.
Oh, I'm good, thank you. No, I have no comment.
Thank you.
Item 3.2, the first presentation review of policy DJE, bidding and purchasing procedures, and this will be presented by Mr. Murray.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the board approve the first presentation revisions to policy DJE, bidding, purchasing procedures, to increase the job order contracting or JOC amount to $2 million per project. Job order contracting or JOC or JOC is a construction procurement option available in the state procurement code. The code allows approved agencies, including school districts, to utilize a purchasing cooperative or state contract in the selection of a JOC. Utilizing a JOC allows an agency to procure a qualified contractor to engage in site-specific or work that is similar in scope across multiple sites. The focus to construct, remodel, and renovate school facilities to enhance security and functionality of our buildings is a major portion of our voter-approved bond measure. Increasing the JOC approved amount will provide another procurement option as we target site-specific improvements across the district. This item has been reviewed by purchasing and the H2 group.
Do I have a motion on item 3.2?
I move that we approve 3.2 as presented.
Second,
Any discussion?
Mike, I'm looking at the old policy here. And so we're basically going from 1 million to 2 million per project.
Correct. This has been in place for, I don't think this policy has ever, we haven't really ever considered this in the past because we haven't had funding in the past to be able to address multiple sites at the same time.
And is this because of age of policy, or is this changes the scope of project, or both?
No, this is just the actual boilerplate default in the procurement code is to have it as $1 million, but then there's the flexibility for the board to increase that. Many districts do that from time to time. This mainly has to do with just the amount of work that we need to accomplish because of the bond at multiple sites.
So if I may add, and I think Mr. Madison, this is what you're getting to, looking at the estimates of what it will cost at each of our elementary sites to do some of those security improvements. Several of them come in over $1 million. And so this would allow us to use this process to start doing some of that work without having to be limited by that $1 million restriction.
An action item will come to you later this month at our normal work session, our regular board meeting. And what Mrs. Asider was just referring to is we're starting to see preliminary budget numbers come in for each of the 6 elementary schools, and we do have probably at least 3 sites that would exceed the current $1 million allotment in policy. And what JOC allows us to do, just to kind of give you a little bit more information there, it really assists the district in the procurement process. Instead of having to go out and advertise and try to select qualified contractors who would then go out and bid these projects individually. It allows us to look at the scope of the projects across the district, and because they're similar in nature, they're all addressing very much the same things as far as fencing and concrete work, same type of site improvements. We're able to then utilize a JOC who's already been pre-qualified through cooperatives who've already gone out and advertised, already have scored and deemed these contractors as qualified to handle that type of work. And it allows us to go ahead and piggyback on that procurement. But they keep that dollar threshold relatively low so that way, for example, with the athletic field project, we wouldn't want to just necessarily go out and find a JOC to then procure and give them a $7-8 million project. We want to make sure that goes through a specific procurement process with an architect involved in that process along the way. These are much more simplified projects that are district-wide.
So any awarding of any final dollars would come through the board.
Correct. Yeah, and that will come to you on April 21st.
And I would share that part of the reason this is coming now and then April 21st, the request to approve this is because now that our schools are closed, we could actually start some of these projects sooner. And that would allow us the time to get them finished prior to opening of the next school year.
I keep driving by the high school looking at that baseball field going, it's still here. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I put Archie on mute so we wouldn't hear. Okay. Archie, did you hear all of that discussion? It's probably on a delay, right? Like she's probably hearing my questions and answering them, but we can't hear her. Okay.
She responded to the board meeting email that she can hear us in real time.
Okay. That's so odd. Okay. I think we'll just vote then if there's no further discussion.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Archana Alliar,
Check your email, Jamie.
Lisa Roman,
Yes. And that is it for today on our agenda. Meeting adjourned.
have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I move we
I forgot.
Second.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Lisa Roman,
Yes.
Archana Alliar.
Yes, thank you. She responded to the board meeting now that she can hear us.
It's better than a barking dog.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're gonna pound the.
Yeah, now it's for real, adjourned.
I would like to say to all of you who arranged this, I think it's the right thing to do, but just for modeling for our parents and our students alone, that the social distancing that we've all been asked to do, I just appreciate it. I know without hearing anything, that this has been very stressful for you guys to arrange. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can tell me how stressful at a later time. I can only imagine.
Thank you all.
Terry, I didn't use the water to touch it.
Okay, thank you.